Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Appreciate you coming by and spending some time to look a little deeper. We'll do part two now. I'm going to start off with, I'm going to give you a little video clip, a couple of video clips, and an audio clip. Kind of the last thing we left off on, we talked about ley lines, the connections to the ley lines and the intersecting areas, the importance of the energy, the electromagnetic fields, how it can be used, that the high up, that shouldn't be high up peoples, know how to use at a high level to manipulate. And if you actually go, if you watch the first series that I did about lures and bait and words matter, part 2 and part 3 actually show you some patents that show you exactly how they can manipulate your electromagnetic field. So definitely look at those because they're showing you the evidence. So very real. It's not, it's not, like I say, it's not a theory. It's theorem at that point. There's verifiable proof and evidence. So definitely check that out because our electromagnetic fields are being manipulated and tampered in order to influence us, and there's patents proving it. So if you watch that series, they're about 30 minutes each, and I show you the actual patents so you can see them for yourself. But those kind of correlate to this because we're talking about the ley lines and their significance, and things that have been put on those areas intentionally to amplify the energy of what somebody wants to do. So we're talking about the idea that our government could actually run a gag essentially, and that knowing how long in advance they know these events correlating with stars, because that's been going on for thousands of years. Said the ancient Chinese, the Mayans, they were tracking eclipses and events hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ahead of time, and were so accurate that even we referenced them. So that's not new, and if you know a group of people are going to refer to religious books and Bible type things when strange events are occurring, that, and you know exactly what names to put where and wherein to put them in advance to make it appear that something biblical might be occurring. You could certainly convince large amounts of people. So, like we showed in the last one, easy enough. So then, obviously there's why and there's how. So when we look at Ronald Reagan and his quote, "Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." So if you think about Ronald Reagan and how long ago that was, and then think before that, he was an actor in Hollywood. Okay? You can do your own research and you will find that there are declassified documents at this point proving that the CIA has been working, and other, we'll call alphabet agencies, essentially the CIA, have been working with Hollywood for decades, presenting ideas to the extent of pretty much creating the whole screenplay narrative, essentially. In order to push certain ideas, to create certain emotional reactions amongst large amounts of people, to lean people toward a certain narrative, maybe regarding war, maybe regarding a social matter, whatever it is they want to influence a certain way. They work with media outlets of whatever avenue to do so. So, considering that he was in Hollywood, he was an actor, and he was a president, and then he says this, and then you like I said, do your research and find that it's true that the government was working with Hollywood for a long time now. And knowing that, you look at something like Independence Day, and you look at that quote, and it appears that that movie was the theater play of his quote playing out. Well, I assume we've all seen that movie at this point. So keep that movie, that idea in mind, that our government is influencing Hollywood on what to put in front of us. So, like I said, that may be hard for some people to believe, but just do your research, you'll prove it to yourself. So, if that's the case, what could the hoax be? Because at this point, for most people, it appeared that eclipse occurred, nothing out of the ordinary, business as usual, move on with life. This was a big, much ado about nothing. In a lot of ways, that's true. But if we're under the impression that an eclipse occurred as we've understood it, and that's exactly what happened, well, the evidence says otherwise. And I showed in that other series, technology already exists for them to project a sun into the sky, one. Countries, and I showed the patents for them. So the patents are there, proven technology, and patents existing in countries around the world that have the technology to project a solar sun or a solar body into the sky that actually gives off heat that at our distance from it would be stronger rays than what we're getting from the heat of the sun. In that series, I show the patents and I show you video of them actually doing it. This is not theory, this is real. So, they can project sun. If they can do that, they can also project other objects into the sky of similar nature. So, this idea has already been put in front of us. The idea that you can project images into the sky. And in addition, we also know, now especially, they tried to hide it right around eclipse time, but the truth is, the moon and the sun were close together, but they were not aligned. They were next to each other. So, the actual possibility of the moon crossing in front of the sun at that time that we saw an eclipse could not have happened. Do your research on that. There's an abundance of references that will show you exactly where the moon was, exactly where the sun was, where the conjunction should have been, where the alignment should have been, and it was impossible for the moon to have crossed over the sun at that time that we looked up and saw what was supposed to be an eclipse. So the moon was not properly aligned for that to occur. So we certainly saw something cover the sun and then go away. But another thing that you will find if you look, and lots of people have been trying to see this for years. At no point in time can you see the moon approaching the sun before the eclipse occurs. Until the shadowing effect takes place, you have no idea the moon is there at all. And they try to explain this away by telling us the sun is so bright that you just can't see the moon. So I want you to think about if you went in your closet and held a tennis ball in one hand and a flashlight in the other, if you just put it so close to it, does it disappear? Like, in what other scenario could this ever possibly take place? Just question a little bit of that. It's so bright and it's so close to it that it's gone. That especially especially considering I can zoom in with my camera and I can make the entire brightness disappear once I get close enough to it. So zoom far enough, that brightness and those rays that seem like you can't see anymore, those disappear and you actually start to be able to, like when you're looking at the moon. If you can zoom close enough, that what we see with our visual eye, a lot of that goes away and you can actually see real stuff. So this, what we saw was not what we were told. And to verify, this is a clip, an audio clip. You can look this up. It's on NASA website, C-SPAN, easy to find. This is the NASA administrator, Bill Nelson, providing some remarks in advance of the eclipse on the 8th. And if you listen very carefully to his words, he says initially, the first thing he says is ellipse. Ellipse. And he didn't misspeak, he pronounces it very clearly. And then he goes on to discuss some weird things that happen, and then later on, he comes back in and he says eclipse. So he uses both words. So, did he misspeak the first time, or was he actually saying exactly what it was? So like I said, you gotta have free will in play. They gotta lie to you and tell you the truth. So, it's double talk, double speak. And these are defined terms. You can look these up. So, like I said, language matters. Words matter. That's how they hide things from us, using language in plain sight. So, listen to what he actually says, and then the kind of weird context that he applies to it. Again, this is Bill Nelson of NASA before the eclipse.
Our mission is for all humanity, and that's because space brings us together. There's no better proof than moments like this, a total solar eclipse. It's a moment when millions of people across North America will look to the heavens as the moon passes in front and between the sun and the earth. And it's a rare sight that we haven't seen in 7 years. And unusual things start to happen as the normal rhythms of Earth are disrupted. When you're seeing this eclipse, you ought to observe this. As the day appears to turn to dusk and then dark, people have heard birds stop singing. They've seen giraffes suddenly begin to gallop. Roosters start crowing and crickets chirp. So watch for these unusual behaviors. And we encourage you to help NASA observe the sights and sounds around you. Eclipses have a special power. They move people to feel a kind of reverence for the beauty of our universe. Their power is not only to unify us on Earth, but to further science and discovery.
If you're in the mountain.
Okay, so hopefully you could hear all of that. But did you catch the number of things that don't add up to the rest of what was told? So, if you heard what he said, one, ellipse, okay, that's the first, but also, later on, he says eclipse, so I can say double talk. So, they're telling you the truth, telling you a lie. He also says that this is like I said, it's very strange with all the things he's presenting about what to expect and weird things, and help them document your observations. Can Get your phone out, like, show us what you see. Okay, well, what did the mainstream media tell you right before the eclipse happened? Do not don't point your phones at the sun. Don't point your phones, don't look at it, don't point your phone at it. So, NASA administrator tells you, help NASA document this by sharing your observations. The media tells you, don't take pictures with your phone, it'll ruin it, it'll cause you problems. So, one of them tell you, document away, the other one tell you, don't take pictures of it at all. Okay. Then he's also talking about how rare this is. Well, as far as rarity, if you notice, if you go back to some of these eclipses before, up to them, leading up, they would say things like, this is a once in a lifetime event. We'll never see this again. But then, a few years, 7 years later, we have another one. Like, they're not so rare that we would have this level of hoorah about it. None of this stacks up, right? He's saying ellipse and eclipse. If you do your research, you will understand why them saying ellipse actually matters. Because the terminology actually applies to quantum physics and space and other things that they use within their own studies and terminologies. So it's not just, oh, well, he's calling it an oval. You have to understand the significance of what this means regarding an ellipse, celestial bodies, historical and ancient references of celestial bodies, some of which we've never heard about through any of our mainstream science curriculums or NASA until very recently. Now all of a sudden they have discovered this planet. Oh, well, it looks like we have another. Well, they're just now telling us that they're finding these things, but they're not near as far away as the things that they're supposedly showing us in space now, that they are looking at and showing us images. And image, it's an important word, words matter, and images is not a photo, and you will go back and see that a lot of what you see from NASA is described as an image, and there's a reason. Image is not a photo. So they're not necessarily lying to you if they tell you it's an image. If they told you it was a photo, then they'd be lying. So there's a lot of double talk. You got to understand how they do this. So that being said, there was more to this. Like I said, this guy, administrator at NASA, tells you ellipse, and then he tells you to document it. The media tells you not to, and then while it's actually occurring, we have things like this, and hopefully we can get this video clip to play for us. This was a news broadcast.
Right now is reaching totality. Let's take a live look at Isabel and Taylor's shot right now. They have been most back on in preparation of the sun coming back out. This was unreal. Something I never imagined. I don't know what kind of star, or if it was a planet we saw in addition to the moon and the
Alright, that was pretty rough, but point being, you can look that article up from that. You can find that video clip if that wasn't audible or if it froze up on you. But what the news anchor said live when they were reporting from the eclipse was, What was really interesting was the other star or planet that we saw. And then you saw immediately after Mothership Station cut away. Nope. And they cut immediately to like the standard Eclipse shot that they've been showing for however long before that. So they cut away from that immediately because them and a lot of other people documented what appeared to be multiple suns appearing and also offset completely, a completely separate body of light that appeared red in the sky. And nobody could explain it. And then the mainstream media accidentally said something apparently they didn't want people to say. So there was something else going on. So like I said, there was a whole lot of hoopla about what might happen, and like I said, there was a lot of biblical correlation. But hopefully with that last video, we can understand how if somebody really wanted to, run a gag on us, what they did really wouldn't be so hard when you look at it from a higher perspective. You got to have micro view and you got to have macro view. So you got a coach that's on the field and you got one that's up in the skybox, because the vantage point is so different, but they're both critical. So if you can't go high and low, you don't get all of the views that you need to see the whole picture. So establishing that there's technology available to do a whole bunch of stuff and that there's something is still fishy about this eclipse thing. So with that being said, what else can they be doing here? Now, one of these ideas, like I said, is projecting images into the sky. And we're not talking about just celestial bodies. We're talking about anything. Essentially being able to just create a movie and project it onto the sky, above anybody. And that technology exists. So let's take a look at some of it. So I've got some stuff on the screen here that you can look at. It's describing to you what a drone show is, where the best drone shows are. You can go look some of these up and see, when you watch the video of these things, it will blow your mind what you're looking at. And that it's nothing but CGI image being projected in a hologram form. So hologram images being projected into the sky is a very real thing, and the technology absolutely exists. This is what it looks like in a more simple format. So you see here, this is Dallas, Texas. These sharks, if you go watch, you can go find the video. The sharks are just circling the air in downtown Dallas. They're just going around in circles. This is what a fleet of drones looks like on the ground before they go up. So they're programmed with whatever it is that the images are going to project, where it's going to go. They program the drones, they fly up in the air, they project images. Next thing you know, stuff's flying in the sky. And you don't see those, just this. What you're looking at on the screen here, this was like a theater presentation. This whole thing is a hologram image, and it changes to exact detail of facial and anything else you can imagine, and it's wild. Same thing here. This is a DNA helix, and it is spinning. There's detail level. It's flying, floating. Jumbo jets flying across bays. These are just a few examples. Go look up some of these videos, and you will understand the level that somebody could go to. If they wanted to put a movie in the sky of just about anything, they can. Between satellites and drones projecting hologram images, they can put in front of us just about anything at this point. And unless you understand this technology and that it exists, you'd have no reason to not buy it. So what are some things that what would they use this for? So there's a few other tie-ins that I'll show as well. So one, we'll skip past this and I'll come back to it. Some of the hologram stuff that we've already got that's been well established. I mean, you can go watch these celebrities do a hologram show full on. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. This was a CNN broadcast where they broadcast in the actual correspondence using holograms. Other stations did a presentation where they did a deep fake of the broadcaster's face. And it was actually someone else reading the news, and then they took it off. You could see it was just a regular guy with some kind of, facial software over him. And then they kicked it back to the newsroom where the real host was. And it looked like he was about to need to change his pants because he couldn't believe what he was watching with the technology. And they had done this with an organization that does this technology. But it's very doable. So the technology is absolutely legitimate. So another thing that ties into this that you see up above you on a regular basis is possibly serving numerous functions that are not good. This has been going on for decades. Only recently has the government, NASA, and anybody else disclosed, yes, they're doing it. And they're pretending like it's a new initiative that they just started doing and it's testing. They're testing the ideas. Well, then why have you been doing it for decades? So what was going on the last 30 years while we were watching you do it? So they're presenting ideas for this now as if they've been doing it recently and it's for a good reason. When in fact they've been doing it for a long time and it's not for a good reason. So these are all pictures that I took myself just around Texas. So with these, another thing you can look at here, this stuff just sticks in the sky, right? It doesn't move, but eventually little bitty particle amounts of it will fall to the earth. And you'll find them around your yard, you're laying on patio equipment, furniture, in the grass. They kind of look like little spider webs just kind of stretched out across your lawn, even though it's not mating season for spiders and there's no spiders in your yard. That's that stuff after it has fallen. So a lot of people get a little weird about this subject, mainly because people researching it don't understand what the scientific terminology is for it, so that if you're trying to research it, you actually get real data. People use the names that they hear describing it, and because they're searching with those terms, you're immediately getting sent to essentially disinformation sites, where what you will find, you'll think is stupid and ridiculous, and you'll just shut it off. And that's exactly what they want. But if you actually, the data and research is 100% established, scientifically proven, they know what it is, they know what's in it, and it's there for you to see, but you have to search for it under its correct terminology. So you have to be looking for it here. So that term is how you will actually be able to start finding real information about this. And at this point, like I said, the real science that's been done on it has proven to the point where the establishments have had to at least come up with some sort of story. And they weren't before. So that's always what happens. Tobacco companies never admitted anything until it was absolutely proven. But then they admitted it. So this happens over and over and over and over. In addition to other things that it's being used for, one, as you can see in some of these pictures, you could put this here to intentionally block things out or make things hard to see. As you can tell, it certainly changes how visible even just the sun is on a regular day. So if you do enough of this over time, you could create either a barrier to block certain things out to where people could not see them. You can also be putting things out that you intend to eventually drip fall down to the population. And in addition, several years ago, some Rice University students collected some of this stuff. They took it back, put it under compound microscopes, did a whole bunch of testing, trying to figure out what was in it. They identified a bunch of the materials, and some of it was a black, metallic, fibrous material, which was surprising based on what color it looks when it's up. But it turned out this material also responded to certain frequencies of sound and other things, and sometimes even moved on its own, which essentially is graphene oxide. So they found these substances in it, and they also found that a lot of these materials would be found if you were creating and manufacturing screens, like a projection screen. So when you know that, and you start to look at this, well, you could use it to block things out, or you could also use it to project something onto. So, again, if you're looking for it under this terminology here, you'll get all the real science, and you will see for yourself what's really been going on. And with the information I just told you, you can see how what I'm describing looks very consistent with what we're seeing being done that doesn't add up with what we've been told is being done. And the patterns and the way it's as if you're trying to paint an entire section systematically. So with that being said, there's, like I said, we've got technology, we've got stuff going on above us that would make it hard to see certain stuff, but it would also provide an invisible surface to project something onto. So technology's there. People who are under the impression that a certain type of event might bring the world together, we know that these are the same group that are already in the process of a one world everything, and y'all know what that is. So if an Independence Day type thing is kind of what they're looking for, then what would stop them at some point from essentially doing this? Considering you can do it in any country, above any country, you could project separate events anywhere, how hard would it be for them to create another, what would appear to be another biblical context of some kind, bring in the projection hologram of Independence Day type images in the sky, scaring the world, and essentially doing what Reagan's talking about here, and then we all unite together under what they could very easily follow with being some sort of a savior-like figure. And depending on whatever land you happen to live in, whatever that figure might be to you and your people, could easily just be projected as a hologram in the sky coming to save you, and you'll likely do whatever it says. So, that, like I said, the idea may sound kind of far-fetched, but the technology exists. The idea to do something like this exists. There's scripture talking about it, and ideas like this, and why you shouldn't necessarily believe it when people go running and pointing. Here he is, there he is, he's coming here, that do not believe it, be skeptical, question things. That's probably not it, is the point. So, the idea of this was originally presented by Serge Monast in the mid-90s. And this is the technology and this particular idea of what might get projected is known as Project Bluebeam. So this is just one theory on what it could be used for and how it could be used. So now we've got, some clear discrepancy in what we've been presented with on what is an eclipse, what did we actually see, how did it actually happen, can we trust our eyes at all right now? And in the previous video series that I did, I showed you the patents proving they can do this and the videos showing them doing it in their respective countries around the world. And so the technology's there, and there's certainly an agenda for it and reasons to do it, especially if you want to control and manipulate large quantities of energy that is coming from people, and you're influencing them on purpose. So next would be, have they ever shown us this in application or how it might be done? And yeah, absolutely. This whole movie right here on the screen, that's what this whole movie's about. The whole plot line is that the character here, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, he shows up from an alternate universe to save the Earth from these elemental creatures that are destroying cities. Turns out, in case you haven't seen this, I'm going to spoil it for you. Turns out he's not a superhero at all. He used to work for Tony Stark. He specialized in the departments where they worked on holographic illusions. He was unstable. He was fired and kicked out. Eventually, he kind of turns into the dark, the evil scientist, and he starts trying to create this technology himself, and he's going to use it to create fake monsters. And he's going to choreograph these fake monsters' attacks, and he's going to place explosive detonations all over the city in specific places. So when these fake creatures are projected and they're attacking a building, there's explosions, so it looks real. This is the plot of this movie. They do show it to you. It plays it out. They are using drones. The drones are projecting giant creatures. Creatures are attacking major things like a bridge. And there's explosive places in all these places, but none of these are real. They're holograms. And they're coordinated and choreographed through AI and drones and satellites to create these hologram images and choreograph them with live detonations that are just essentially dynamite tucked into a building. And they showed you this movie and plenty others of a similar idea. And again, if we're aware of the technology, they have far more. So again, this is only the tip of this iceberg. There's far more to. I mean, you can find lots and lots more of examples of stuff like this. But the technology is there. The motives are there. We're aware that deception is certainly taking place. We've been deceived in so many ways we can't even imagine. And everything is inversion, upside down, backwards. Take what is good, make it bad, make bad good, so on. So these are all very real possibilities based on things that we already know. So these aren't just empty theories that sound crazy because it just is bizarre. It sounds bizarre because it turns out truth is a lot wilder than fiction. And a whole lot of what we've been presented as fiction is not actually based on fiction. So these are the kind of things that we kind of have to be aware of to not get trapped in all these different psyops, psychological operations. If you watch that first video series, you'll patents showing exactly that. Like these aren't theories. There's patents proving that this is on the board and that it is being used. Declassified government documents describing how they use stuff. And I put all of that in those videos so you can see that there's hard evidence on this stuff. And all I'm doing is connecting some of the dots based on the hard evidence that we've already been able to see. So, like I said, we've been through ley lines and important areas in eclipses and lies and deceptions of eclipse and what is it really, what else could it be. So, with all that being said, in a roundabout way, in the coming, months, year, however long, if there's something that appears to be in the sky that seems like something that we've seen in a movie, probably, definitely don't just buy that. I've shown you the technology for them to fake just about anything they want to. So if they want us to believe something, all they got to do is turn it on, and it will appear. So, this same technology we're talking about really has a much deeper tie-in. And that is actually one of NASA's most renowned that kind of gave us some exit clues when he was dying. And it turns out his story and his background is a lot more different than we would actually have been told. And at this point, a lot of it is kind of in the mainstream narrative, but people don't know it because a lot of things get declassified or information put out and released, but there's never an announcement of it. So unless you go back consistently and check for stuff, you would never see it. They're not going to tell you about it. It's declassified, that's all they're doing. They're putting it in the public sector, they're not going to tell you it's there. It is upon us to go out and dig this stuff. So, NASA, Wernher von Braun, his involvement in NASA, rockets, space, the narrative, and some of the things that he told us on his way out that clue us in to a lot more of the actuals about these theories I showed you and the technology that we just looked at and the patents we talked about in the first series, because all this stuff ties together. So they may look unrelated, but the first 3 videos that I put in that series, that content and those patents tie to this stuff, which is going to tie to the next stuff. And all of it's all in the same pot, eventually. So, the next one I'll dive in to the von Braun connection and the things that we learned from him and his life and how that pertains to this. And then we're going to go way back and do some ancient timeline correlations to kind of put some things together about who is where today based on very, very old, ancient information that most of us, for the most part, are in agreement on. And we'll see how that correlates to this and possibly how this technology is not the first time that this has been around. So I'll wrap it up from there and I'll do a part 3 and we'll go from there. So peace and love, my friends. Do your own research.